Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy that today we have yet another voice talk, this time with Lucy Jackson, and we've been trying to schedule this for a very long time. So I'm so happy that I'll finally get to hear the details of Lucy's research. Lucy is based at the University of Glasgow, where she focuses on a project titled Examining Media Effects on Sociolinguistic Cognition. And Lucy is generally interested in the mechanisms behind social evaluations, covert, overt evaluations, stereotypical representations, of course, language ideologies, accentism, linguistic discrimination in society more generally, and also more generally, media influence on speech, perception, and production. Lucy is also People's Choice Award winner for the University of Glasgow 3-minute thesis competition from 2023. So we have a celebrity in our midst. And today, Lucy will tell us about, and I hope I'll pronounce it correctly, mediatization, both.
Yes.
Mediatization of the marginalised, a quantitative study of Glaswegian accent portrayals in film.
Yes. Well done. It is a mouthful. I do apologise.
Yes, sorry, Lucy, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Misha, for that wonderful introduction. I'll just share, let me see. I don't think I clicked share sound, so I'm not off to a good start. Here we go. Right. There we go. So let me just get it. Oh, can we all see that okay? Yes, you can. Yeah, brilliant. So my technical competence isn't betraying me just yet. As Misha said there, today I am going to be talking about the mediatisation of the marginalised, and this is a quantitative study of Glaswegian vernacular and the accent and the identity in film. So what I'll just do is I'll dive straight into it, of course, if you can stop for any questions or questions at the end, that's wonderful. So as Nisha already wonderfully summed up, I'm a PhD candidate at Glasgow, and kind of my core interests are the socioindexicality of speech sounds and accents more collectively. And from that, accent-based stereotype formation, implicit measures of attitudes, and then, of course, media influence on the above cognitive processes. So today I will be talking to you about a few things, a couple of components to be able to talk about the research. For anybody not aware, by the way, this is a really famous monument in Glasgow, and there is always a traffic cone on the hedge. So even when the police try to take it down, it is always there, and it's a synonymous symbol of Glasgow. So just if you're wondering, that is why that is there. But anyway, I shall move on. So today I'm going to be talking about the mediatisation of language, and my overall kind of higher level question is looking at accent use in the media and whether there are any implications on language attitudes and speaker perception. And then as well, from that, I'll be explaining why I conducted my content analysis, that quantitative analysis today of the Glaswegian vernacular accent in films, and then kind of segueing to explain how I'll be using the results from this content analysis to help lay the groundwork and develop the stimuli for my subsequent eye tracking experiment that will be looking at implicit language attitudes. So I'll start on with the social meaning of language back. I know that some of us are very much aware, so I will just kind of give a summary view today and kind of the perspective that I'm coming from. And so we know that accents can play an integral role in the signalling of social identity. And so with this sense, for example, maybe I've been speaking for a few minutes already, and you may be using my accent, other parts of the speech signal, and other semiotic resources to make assumptions potentially about where I'm from, my socio-demographic background, and other fine-grained details like my personality traits and social class. Now, these assumptions that we form of individuals from accents are inherent to how we navigate the social landscape on a daily basis. However, it can result in language-based stereotypes. And whenever these discriminatory judgments are formed on the basis of accent variation, we can refer to this as accent bias. Now, before I dive into accent bias within the UK and its implications, it's just worth noting what I mean by language attitudes and how we conceptualise it for today's talk. Now, it is quite a tricky area of the field. There's a plethora of theories. There's a lot of debates of exactly what an attitude is, so kind of rooted in social psychology. There's perspectives on how attitudes are formed, why they are formed. Some people think there's kind of dual processes going on. Lots and lots of ideas circulating around. And since it's been adopted into linguistics to have a look at language attitudes, it has resulted in a lack of a unified perspective on what we mean by language attitudes and its definition, and then the knock-on effects, of course, of how you would measure language attitudes. So today, hopefully to avoid any confusion, I'm going to be defining attitudes in line with Laura Riceil's work. And this will be looking at associations between language phenomena and social meaning that allows us to form these social evaluations of language variety and speaker. I will be contributing a large chunk of my thesis to be talking about this if anybody wishes to have a wild weekend and read up on this, but for today, it's going to be really simplified and that's what I mean today. So when we talk about language attitudes, firstly, we'll just lay the groundwork with a common sociolinguistic perspective, which looks at the evaluative dimensions of status and solidarity. Sometimes it's termed as a triad. We have a third dimension of social attractiveness or dynamism. But today I'll be talking about solidarity and status. So when we mean status, we are meaning that we have attitudes forms of a speaker based on their socioeconomic status, prestige, and other traits such as intelligence and authority. And typically we see standard variety speakers being upgraded in this dimension. Then we've got solidarity, and this kind of contributes to attributes such as the perceived friendliness and trustworthiness of a speaker. And it's worth noting that there is another theory called the stereotype content model, and it's essentially the same thing. It's derived from social psychology and it accounts for social group stereotypes, not just pertaining to linguistics, but kind of more marginalised and stereotype groups, sorry. And essentially competence encompasses status and everything within that. And warmth as well envelops and encompasses solidarity. Now, one thing that Cuddy et al. For the stereotype model stated was that we usually find the paradigm to be negatively correlated. So if individuals are perceived as being really high in competence, they would then be perceived as being low in warmth. So there's typically we see that negative correlation going on. Now, when we talk about accent bias in the UK, accent is not a protected characteristic in the Equality Act, unlike lots of other characteristics we find which are protected against discrimination. Despite this, we see working class variety speakers to be downgraded along the competency paradigm, so that's including intelligence and proficiency and all of those components. And there are real life implications for accent bias. So we've found that both regional and foreign accented speakers have their job prospects negatively impacted because of accent bias. And this is due to, of course, those judgments, those perceptions of them being lesser proficient and having lesser expertise in their jobs. And also we can see that there is an increased likelihood of vernacular speakers, so non-standard speakers, being accused of crimes and receiving harsher judicial punishments than standard speakers. So we can see with these implications, there's a real motivation to understand exactly what language attitudes are and also how they are formed and circulated within society. And this leads on to language in the media. Now, media itself has been found to influence societal perceptions and subsequent behaviours when consuming the mediated content on a long-term basis. And researchers found this with effects of violence and aggression. So lots of research have found children to display higher levels of aggression in playtime when they've previously been exposed to violent television. We see it with other perceptions as well, such as altered body image, increased sexual aggression, and of course the link between media exposure and media that's containing racial stereotypes and the increase in racism as well. So if we tie this into a linguistics perspective, there has been sociolinguistic research that accounts for the influence of consuming media on language change, so on language production. But when we have a look at the impact of media on language attitudes and speaker perception, it's widely assumed, but there's not a lot of direct empirical investigation. There's only a smattering of a few studies that have a look at this, which is very surprising. Because as you all very well know, because you've contributed to this, we find language-based stereotypes in the media from very early age content such as Disney films, children's television, American primetime television, video games. It is endless. And just a summary here, we can see typically stereotypes forming in these studies where non-standard variety or foreign accented speakers commonly are portrayed with higher levels of untrustworthiness, and equally we see non-standard regional accented speakers being portrayed with lesser competency levels but with higher warmth, so that negative correlation I was talking about beforehand. And to exemplify this a little bit for you, I'm going to show you an extract from my research that I did a couple of years ago looking at Yorkshire accent imitation in Game of Thrones. So we're having a look at accents in Game of Thrones. For anybody not aware, Game of Thrones is a fictional fantasy world, kind of loosely paralleling medieval world-ish, with inclusion of dragons and magic obligatory, as you do. And so I'll start off then with the Lannisters. And they are the most wealthy and powerful family located in the south of this fictional Westeros kingdom. Now, large and large, they are speakers of the received pronunciation variety, so RP. Now, in real life, less than 3% of the real life population speak this variety. However, what's happening here is that our already present ideologized values of RP speakers as being extremely prestigious and high status is being used when we are constructing these very dominant and fictional characters. And we can highlight this even more when we contrast it to the opposing family in the north, who are the Starks, and they are largely depicted on screen as being speakers of the Yorkshire English variety, a regional northern English variety, and other northern dialects as well. Now, what we find in Game of Thrones is that alongside Starks' Yorkshire English varieties, their portrayals, their character portrayals, parallels with existing language attitudes of Yorkshire speakers that we've found as being perceived as extremely low status, but very trustworthy. So again, that kind of negative correlation of the competency warmth paradigm. Now, when I'm saying that we can see all of these accents and associated information being used, I'm not saying it's a bad thing and we should burn our televisions. Yeah, I'm supporting that. There's clearly substantial benefits to be using the socio-indexical properties of phonetic variation and, in this sense, accents, because it allows us to directly map all of the associated social information of accents and speech community onto these blank slates of characters with extremely minimal effort. It's a really fast retrieval of this information. However, this, of course, can result in extremely typified and stereotypical ideologies. And when it's happening on a frequent basis, it can result in the enregisterment of these stereotypes, even more so in the media and society. And my question is, does reliance of accent stereotypes in the media further reinforce these stereotypes? Kind of a very circular question. And so my overall PhD question is looking at whether exposure to these mediated accent portrayals, typically stereotypical, can impact our own language attitudes and speaker perceptions. Now, before I can dive into that for my PhD, I first need to actually gain some empirical data on how my focus accent is portrayed in the media. And this is where today's research comes in, looking at the Glaswegian accent. I'm looking here at the Glaswegian vernacular accent, and this is a heavily stigmatised language variety spoken by the working class population of Glasgow in Scotland. And just to quickly summarise some characteristics of the accent, there are similarities with other West Coast Scots varieties here in Scotland. However, when it's compared to just the middle class Glaswegian variety, we can really see some social stratification. We've got greater dentalised realisations of some phonemes, we've got TH fronting and extremely dark L's, and also some differences in rhoticity too, and of course vowel differences. If anybody's not aware, I'm going to play an extract from Kevin Bridges, who is a Glaswegian vernacular speaker and a comedian. I must preface this with a warning that there is high levels of profanity use and for the rest of this presentation, so I'll just play it now.
New York, getting dragged into museums, trying so hard to enjoy it, just that voice in there, going shite, 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 shite. Trying so hard. It's no shite, Kevin. Show some respect. It's fucking shite. It's an art gallery. It's full of shite. Shite. Shite, 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 shite. Listening to the tour guide, and this is 300 years old. This is it, New York.
So, example of Kevin Bridges, who actually lives not too far from Glasgow University. So another aspect that I want to bring to the forefront is talking about the socio-cultural prominence of Glaswegian in the UK. So at one point, Glasgow was deemed the murder capital of Europe due to excessive crime rates, statistically. We also have something called the Glasgow effect, found in medical research and sociological literature, which accounts for extremely high mortality rates linked to substance use and poverty and suicide. And we often find Glaswegian identity to be reinforced in the media as being synonymous with gang life and violence and deprivation. And I'll highlight this a little bit more with some colloquial phrases we have here. So we could say to give somebody a Glaswegian kiss, a Glasgow kiss, and this actually refers to headbutting somebody, which is a very violent act. We also have the Glasgow smile, and this refers to extremely large scars that young males typically get here in gang life. So you can see even with these phrases that are embedded in UK culture and society, it kind of reinforces this very violent and aggressive ideology. So then, moving on to the meaty bit of the talk, so to measure any empirical patterns in the media, I conducted a content analysis of GV, of Glaswegian vernacular accent portrayals. And for anybody not aware, a content analysis can be applied in lots of different fields, but it essentially is a quantitative method to provide a systematic analysis of any content for the presence of concepts and themes. Now, I'm applying it in this context to measure patterns in accent portrayals and associated social information. Now, bringing back to the question of why I'm doing this, and for my overall PhD research, this is to reveal any significant patterns in how GV accents are portrayed in film, which will then help me develop my stimuli in the later eye tracking experiment that I'll be conducting. Now, Looking at the materials for this study, there was 12 films that were selected across a 25-year period. If we see in the right-hand column, this refers to the production perspective, which incorporates both the origins and the locality of the production company. And so there was an equal distribution of production perspective. We've got Scottish, British, and global. Now, the rationale for doing this is, of course, if we have Scottish produced films, the stereotypes present in that may be extremely different to globally produced films which have a global frame of reference. So it's trying to have a look at that in a little bit more detail. And so from these production perspectives, the highest grossing films were selected, with the idea that higher revenue generates greater audience consumption, so a greater amount of individuals have consumed and been exposed to this media. So moving on to accent classification, which can be a little bit of a tricky subject, particularly when having a look at mediated accent portrayals, and this could be for lots of reasons. Firstly, we cannot really consider accents and language in the media as being authentic and real-life speech, due to lots of reasons such as being dramatised performances and the issue of accent credibility. So we often find actors who are not native speakers of that accent attempting to imitate this accent for a particular character. And this can result in various degrees of phonetic consistency. We've seen it in previous works, such as Pedersen's work, looking at Mel Gibson's imitated Scottish accent attempt in Braveheart, and as I discussed a little bit earlier, my Yorkshire accent imitation in Game of Thrones. But the argument is in this type of sphere of work is that regardless of phonetic success, so regardless of whether an actor can truly produce monophthongal variants of a face and goat vowel, they are still attempting the target's accent. So therefore, the performances will still be portraying all the associated social information of that target accent, regardless of whether it's 100% credible or not. So this moves on to then what currently sociolinguistic research follow in the style of they classify accents based on the predominant style of the speaker. And this is via impressionistic auditory analysis. However, I wanted to go a little bit further and also incorporate contextual cues to underline the classification. And so this was both the use of film internal and external cues. And so an example of this would be with filming internal cues. This could be actually within the film, characters may make explicit reference to their own speech variety or accents or where they're from, and other semiotic resources as well. So geographical markers within the film. Also, a really substantial component is film external cues. So there's a lot of recorded discussions by directors and actors on the characters' backgrounds and accents when discussing the film. An example of this would be the Irish actress Jessie Buckley on a British chat show, Lorraine Kelly, talking about how she adopted the Glaswegian vernacular accent for the film Wild Rose. In this case, she said that she just spent a lot of time in the pub to perfect her Glaswegian accent. So already we can see there's some circulating stereotypes, but you can see with these contextual cues, it can help substantiate the classification of the accent even further. So then, moving on to the coding procedure for the content analysis. 233 characters across the 12 films were analysed, and for each character, they were analysed across 25 separate attributes, as we can see. Social attributes were analysed using a 5-point Likert scale. So, for example, if a character was rated 5 for intelligence, this would show that they were portrayed with extremely high levels of intelligence, and 1 would be the inverse, so being portrayed with extremely low levels of intelligence. We've also got ordinal and binary categories employed to capture both sociodemographic information and social behaviours to really pinpoint the stereotypes, the stigmatised behaviours we kind of see of Glaswegians, the ideologies around that. Now, the average agreement between the coder team was 86%. So this is something called intercoder reliability. And what it means is that we can have separate coders, take the same coding conventions, go away and analyse the films completely separately, then come back and compare each individual data point. And so there's an agreement of 86% on that. Typical benchmark would be anything above 80 being satisfactory, being good. So we can see here that there is a good level of agreement between the coders across the whole data set. Now, there were 27 accents recorded in the data set. Now, to specifically analyse Glaswegian vernacular, I subsetted it to 9 main accents. And this was just so I could compare GV across region and class there. So we can see that here with the accents. So we have in the top left, we've got Glaswegian vernacular, and then we've got middle class counterparts, middle class accents we find in Scotland. And then across the way, we can look at regionality. So we've got England and the socially stratified accents, and then an external frame of reference with general American. So then, the effects of accent type on the portrayed character attributes we find in these films were analysed via a series of non-parametric tests and probabilistic ordinal-logistic regression models, which is a mouthful. So I'll show you this first of all. We found using Kruskal-Wallis test, so a non-parametric test, firstly as an overview glance, that all attributes apart from trustworthiness and friendliness showed significant variation by accent type. So what this means is when looking at one attribute, we're able to see that there is stochastic dominance, there's significant variation depending on the accent of the character. So to hone in more and have a look at Glaswegian vernacular compared to other accents then, we can see that GV has significantly different portrayals of aggression, profanity use, intelligence and authority. And I'll give you an example of this from the post hoc done test. I've got more information at the end, but I don't want to do data overload. So when comparing it to received pronunciation, the standard variety, we see that Glaswegian vernacular has significantly heightened levels of profanity use, indicated by that positive Z-score. And then we also see that they have significantly reduced levels of intelligence with that negative Z-score here with the post hoc done test. And so then to have a look at this even more so, to compare it to all the accents at the same time, this is when we use the ordinal logistic regression models. And what happened was that a model was fitted for each attribute that showed that significant variation. So first we have a null model that was fitted with the attribute in question, and then sequentially adding predictors, of course with accent being there, but the additional predictors and two-way interactions were also tested. And predictors were retained if it increased the model fit, for example. So I'll exemplify this and give you an example today with, of course, staying on theme, looking at profanity use. So this is the model output of just the model that had a look at profanity use. Now, to visualise this more and have a look at all the accents in relation to Glaswegian vernacular, here in the odds ratio plot, we've got Glaswegian vernacular being plotted as the intercept line. So anything kind of strained to the left shows lesser levels of profanity use, and anything, of course, to the right shows higher levels. So what we can see then is, compared to other accents, GV, Glaswegian vernacular, is portrayed with robust differences in increased profanity use, apart from London vernacular. And so this we can also call this as the Cockney accent, the Cockney dialect. And unsurprisingly, we can see overall now, not just with that previous comparison to received pronunciation, standard varieties are portrayed with less profanity use compared to GV. So In blue, we have the standard Scottish accents. So we've got that middle class Glaswegian, standard Scottish English, and then we have our standard English accent. So we can really see from the data now whereabouts GV is kind of sitting in between these different types. And I'm going to give you an example now from the actual data from the media, so you can see how these data points have arose.
Open the fucking door! Get him fucking in here! I mean, you little bastard! Get him out!
Shut up, you stupid wee cunt.
Tell him to get fucking out here!
Not fucking here. Hey, you! Fuck off, go on. Where back to your wee hovel?
You know, cunt, you tell me when out the horns on he's fucking dead.
Fucking shut
What?
up. You're fucking
Can't
young.
ask on your feet, your teeth, your gums out, fucker.
Shut up. You try that. You fucking try it, boy. Now come do this.
What?
Fuck off. You fucking dare. You dare. See you cunt.
So there's no surprise that this individual rated extremely high for profanity use. So this film is actually from a Scottish production perspective, so it's quite a grassroots independent film. I'm going to now show you one from more of a British global perspective. It's on Netflix and it is called In the Loop, and it is a satirical comedy about politics within the UK. And to pay particular attention between the different dynamics of the accented speakers in terms of profanity use.
From Washington today.
Okay.
We've got enough fucking Pentagon goons here to stage a fucking coup d'etat.
Minister,
Not the time, love. I'm busy. Fuck off.
this is Toby.
Toby, hi. Glad you could make it. It's a bit of an odd morning here.
Yes,
Welcome to the madhouse. I apologise for Malcolm.
Don't apologise for me. Apologise for yourself. Did I not just tell you to fuck off and yet you're still here?
It's true, I am, yes, still here.
Hi, fetus boy. Lesson 1. I tell you to fuck off. What do?
F off?
You'll go far. Well, fuck off.
Judy and I were thinking that...
Over from Washington today.
So we can see then with that there is for comedic effect as well. We can see the stereotype playing out, and even more so when we have the standard speaker being asked to repeat what the Glaswegian speaker said. He just said F off. So we can even see that there's those levels. So moving on then. What I then did from the data is I modelled the data to create the predictive probabilities of how characters may be portrayed then according to accent. So here, when we're having a look at this is the predictive probabilities of how much an individual may swear, so profanity use, for a fictional male adult, depending on the accent that they may have. So at the bottom here, if this fictional male adult had a Glaswegian vernacular accent, we can see that they display extremely high levels of profanity use, with 5 being red there. However, when we contrast this to the standard accents, so standard Scottish English, and then we've got received pronunciation, they've got really small red boxes there. And so this is kind of showing us what we typically usually see, and the reason, the rationale for doing this is it further helps with the development of kind of my stimuli, so I can really look at, based on the data, how to portray my mediated stimuli and the eye tracking. So firstly, that outcome of this content analysis, this was the first quantitative examination of UK accents with a Glaswegian vernacular focus in film. Empirical patterns were found when comparing Glaswegian vernacular accents with other accents, and we see significantly heightened levels of stigmatized behaviours such as aggression and profanity use, which we focused on today, and downgraded competency levels. Now, this does parallel with present social stereotypes of Glaswegians as violent and antisocial, as we previously looked at, and downgraded competence that we do find in sociolinguistic research. Now, the next steps then for my PhD is to investigate the influence of consuming this media. Either it can be stereotypical portrayals of Glaswegian or counter-stereotypical portrayals, and how this may affect our implicit language attitudes. And this will be using eye tracking as a real-time measure of implicit cognition. I've got a bit more information about this at the end if anybody does have any questions, but again, don't want to overload too much. And so kind of the aims of the content analysis and segueing into the eye tracking is to firstly see whether, oh, I've got the bullet points all messed up. There we go. Whether eye tracking methods can be used to have a look at language-based stereotypes as an implicit measure, because we've found eye tracking to work with other stereotypes, and whether media exposure can impact our language attitudes. As I said before, it's kind of widely assumed, but there's not been a lot of work done on this. And if we do find that that is present, as we found with media effects on societal perceptions, I've got it all the way the wrong way around. There we go. We can have a look at media control, that kind of questions. In the UK, we do have regulations on how other demographics are represented in the media. Do we need to maybe consider this for speech communities if we can see that there is a real effect of media influence on our perceptions and stereotypes? And again, bringing this back into a criminal context is, could it impact criminal convictions if perceptions towards perpetrators are affected by prior media consumption? So again, we see sometimes where individuals are not allowed to engage in the media or so on when they're on jury or things like that. So if we see that media effects can influence this, is this something to look at? And overall, kind of now within the world where everything is mediatized, how susceptible are we to mediated messages of bias and its impact on everyday society? So I hope that whistle-stop tour of my research wasn't too painful and it made sense. But thank you very much for listening today. Thank you.